All right. So welcome to our monthly virtual discussion, also known as our Fireside chat. Today, we're going to be talking about fund resilience and diversification. We are recording this session, just a heads up. So if you do want to, engage in the conversation at any point, feel free to put your comments or your questions into the chat box, and we'll make sure that we read those. But Ms. Cummings has prepared some questions for us from some previous participants. So we're going to go ahead and kick off the discussion with the questions that she has.
Okay, hello everyone. Today we will discuss growing with resilience, and fund diversification, which are two important concepts in project management. One of the questions we have is, when you look at the resilience of a company's capacity to absorb stress, recover critically functionality, and thrive in altered circumstances, how can an organization develop resilience?
I would say in that context, what we don't talk about enough is that there are so many resources available to business owners, especially BIPOC business owners and leaders of nonprofit organizations around the country. I know specifically here in San Antonio, Texas, we have a cooperative that is actually helping individual small minority nonprofit and for-profit businesses get access to talent. One of the most important things about growing a business is, if it's a nonprofit, for-profit, doesn't matter the establishment. One of the most important things about growing a business is making sure that you have talent that you can rely upon, right? And that talent has got to come from a diverse source of locations. It's got to come from university centers. It's got to come from colleges. It's got to come from, workforce, civilian workforce. It's got to come from military, transitioning, retired. We are with Tacit Growth Strategies. We've been a skill bridge employer partner with the Department of Defense's skill bridge program for, I want to say, about 2 or 3 years now. And, thinking about diversifying our talent from that specific pool of talent has been extraordinary for us, I know, for our organization. It's exposed us to all sorts of business revenue generating opportunity that we never would have, imagined before. So one thing that I tell people, especially in these times where you see the economy shrinking, you see giving, charitable giving is definitely sophisticating, and it's shifting a little bit in terms of its focus. What I like to tell people is that you've got to look at talent kind of similarly to how we look at public relations or mergers and acquisitions, right? A lot of these things we do not necessarily because it's the best, in terms of dollar cost averaging. It's not necessarily the best decision to make for the company or the nonprofit at the time, but it is something that over a long term or over a medium term will pay off for you, right? So I think investing in talent is the one thing that you can think of immediately today that can help change the trajectory of your company or your organization, depending on what exactly it is that you're specializing in. If you're in the knowledge industry, you can look at a certain type of talent pool, and we're more than happy to talk with you about that and help you through that here. But if you're in the sort of commodity-based services lane, then that's a completely different conversation that we can help you through as well. So I think considering talent is one big thing. The next major thing is thinking about procurement, right? Procurement is the game changer. I know for Tacit Growth Strategies, for us, when we got started, was having this conversation earlier this morning with one of our local philanthropic groups here, that they award about 30 to 40 million in grants every year. And I've had the pleasure of serving on their community advisory committee since I think it was 2018, right before COVID, not long before COVID, which dramatically changed everything, right? But in that capacity, the conversation I had with them was that I think Tacit Growth Strategies was able to be successful in our early days, which was back in 2018 when I established Tacit Growth Strategies. I think we were able to be successful because at that point in time is where I was actually leading the African American Museum, right? coming in as founder of a for-profit, Tacit Growth Strategies, that was focusing really on, at the time, grant writing, fundraising services, and government contracting from a standpoint of project management, program evaluation, and then also serving as president and chair of the board for this community-based archive and museum, which actually started as a community-based organization without a 501c3 designation, and then we got the 501c3 designation. I think coming into that capacity, serving in both of those at the same time, I was able to diversify funding for not only my company, but also the African American Museum at the same time, right? Because I had thought leadership, I had experience, I had advocacy networks in both tracks. And I think that for business owners, especially today, right, where the emphasis is on what good do you do for the community? How much do you give back? What is the impact that your business has on the community that it serves, and beyond? Because we're so socially minded now and socially focused, I think me being in the capacity that I was in for both the nonprofit organization that was emerging and my for-profit that was emerging that I, first started, I think that uniquely positioned us for success later on down the line. Now, of course, I don't recommend it to a lot of people. I just throw it out there as my own personal experience. But, in that capacity, I tell people all the time, I nearly killed myself, doing that. You're working 13, 14-hour days. I mean, you're on all of the time. You go into work and, for the for-profit side of the house, I knew what to expect because I set the schedule. My team knew what to do. I knew what to do. So it wasn't so much ambiguity. But on the nonprofit side of the house, if anybody on the call knows or watching this knows about, being a nonprofit leader, that those days, you don't know what they're going to look like. You can get a little bit of everything that walks through that door on any given day, or picks up the phone and calls you, and you got to pick up that call as a nonprofit leader. So it was such a high stress, high energy environment all of the time. But I think that the sacrifice that we made in 2018, leading up to 2020, leading up to 2021, laying that foundation, I wouldn't take that back. I would not take it back. And all of us, I think Tacit Growth Strategies, especially the African American Museum here in San Antonio, we're better positioned now because of the sacrifice that we made back in 2018, 2019, 2020, going into COVID, not knowing what to expect and still receiving grants, still receiving government contracts, even as an archive and museum, because we were able to communicate the importance of gathering oral histories and collecting and archiving that before we lost an entire generation of people who were not only functioning as our collective memory at the time, but also part of defining Puro San Antonio, right? Defining what San Antonio is as a city to itself, to its neighbors, what distinguishes San Antonio from Austin. For example, we're only an hour away. Those stories distinguish San Antonio from Austin, right? So we were able to communicate the urgency in gathering those stories and other artifacts that those the now ancestors might have wanted to pass on to the family, but the family, for whatever reason, was out of reach or wasn't available or wasn't interested. We were able to be the boots on the ground to ensure that knowledge, those artifacts, et cetera, were not just sort of, taken by the highest bidder and sold or put into another museum, which is what commonly happens, and marked up with incredible value that family could never, expect to be returned. We're not about that. Anything that we have at this museum is on loan. We don't own it. So if that family or whoever else that's within that estate wants to come back and reclaim any part of that, they can. And we encourage them to. We are custodians of that. So I think because we were able to not only communicate urgency, but also communicate the importance of all of this work being done, the work that Tacit was doing from a program evaluation standpoint for the courts system, right? The work that the African American Museum was doing for a lot of those folks that we were serving, that we were evaluating the program for with the court system. A lot of those participants came to the museum to be reminded of their significance in the community and why their rehabilitation and their stabilization was so important to the fabric of the community and to the economic prosperity of San Antonio, right? So all of it started to kind of mesh and come together. And I think because of that, we were all able to tap into a diversified funding ecosystem, because now you're not only relying on crowdfunding and individual, pledges and donations, you're also relying upon in-kind from school systems. We used to have teachers that come dedicate curriculum, dedicate reading hours, all sorts of train folks on how to be docents at the museum. All those types of things came, and they all have a value, right? But a lot of that stuff at first was being donated in kind. Curation services were donated. So, from an economic standpoint, the work that we were doing had economic, social, truly transformative impacts across, multiple categories. So that's why, I think right now, especially, we have to be very creative in how we go about thinking about fund diversification, especially now. Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? I don't want to dominate the conversation too long.
Okay, I have one more. How can an organization effectively present the conditions under which risk management and efficiency management can contribute to the firm's strategic imperative of lowering its operational risk?
That's a great question. Now, when I hear risk and when we discuss risk from a project management standpoint, we discuss risk from both the positive and the negative standpoint, right? Risk can be positive or they can be negative. When we think about managing for risk and efficiency, I'm thinking about Kanban, Ishikawa, lean, when we start to consider strategically how we go about managing a portfolio of programs and projects, right, that are going to lead us to not only bottom line prosperity, but also hopefully impact prosperity. From a fund diversification standpoint, that means that you cannot have this sense of caginess, right? You cannot have this sense of opportunism. You cannot have this sense of constantly saying to yourself, oh, that's an opportunity missed. That's an opportunity we should have gone after. I talk about this in my book, and I actually start the book with this conversation. The book starts with the conversation about a nonprofit founder who is very unorganized. Portia's all over the place. And Portia was, if you looked at her email address, her email had 1,000+ unread messages. Okay. Looking at her email account, I was saying in the book, we opened the conversation with her having missed out on funding opportunity because it was a message in her inbox that was left unread. This is what we're talking about, right? You've got to have a handle on what's important versus what's a priority. It's not the same. What's a priority versus what's important is not the same. If they are the same for us right now, then that means we're constantly doing this. We're squirrels, right? Trying to catch the next thing. When we do this, we are constantly shaken from our foundation. People look at us and they actually are going to, instead of want to help us, they're going to undermine the work that we do. Because from their standpoint, they're going to assume, oh, you're all about the money. Your outcome is the money, right? Your goal is the money. If your goal is the money, then that, instead of looking at money as a tool, people are going to treat you like a tool. Okay, and you see this happen a lot. That's what happened with Portia. Portia was essentially let go by her board of directors because they looked at her as what she was, a risk, a negative risk that they did not want to, essentially have in that role and capacity because she was going to bring down the organization. She had lost sight of the reason why they do the work. We have to be patient. Part of that is making sure that we have JOMO. We're functioning from a place of JOMO, right? JOMO, JOMO, is the joy of missing out. We have to function from that space. And Ms. Cummins and I, we had this conversation the other day where there's a client that we have in another state outside of Texas who recently realized that when we go and submit proposals, right? You go submit proposals and you even get some of those projects, those grant funded projects awarded. What ends up happening to your intellectual property, what ends up happening to all your research, your reports and everything, how you've gone about being successful in delivering this grant funded project is not yours to own. You have forfeited ownership rights. Okay, that normally is going to go to the funding entity. The funding entity now is the owner of that. So think about what that looks like. Think about your current nonprofit, your current business, everything that you're doing to run this organization. You don't own the processes. You don't own the standard operating procedures. You don't own the notes. You don't own the emails. You don't own the budget. None of the things that you've put together will be able to, when you leave or when you resign or when you succeed, whatever, part of your succession plan, that is not for you alone to determine how said materials will be used by the funding sources. So as far as they could be working with another nonprofit that's got a similar mission, similar vision, right? And actually might be wanting to do a lot of what you're doing, right? You don't know what's being communicated to them that you've created. Again, it goes back to JOMO. Sometimes when you read the fine print, you realize it's not worth. Sure, they're dangling $500,000 in front of me, right? For example, is it worth it for you to go after it? And that's why you have PMOs like Tacit Growth Strategies, right? That's where we come into play. Because not only are we there to help you put together the competitive proposals and the bids, we're there to help you have that conversation with your board and your staff. Here's what you're going to forfeit if we go after this. Sure, it's a great opportunity, but what isn't going to be a great opportunity, especially in a shrinking economy? If an opportunity presents itself right now, you're going to want to take it because everybody wants to say, oh, we've got a new partner. We're partnering with XYZ. Or we've expanded our programming to include the scope of this particular scope of services, or we've done, everybody wants that. It's newsworthy. Whenever you get newsworthy news, other things get to come from that, right? Other funding opportunities open up, all sorts of things can come from that. But again, it's all about the joy of missing out and understanding who you are, what your organization is about, what your company is about, and what are you going to, strategically choose to partner with versus what are you going to strategically choose to pass up? That's what it's about. Tacit Growth Strategies has had opportunities to partner with all sorts of institutions that we've said, you know what, we're not aligned. Partnering with this institution or this entity or this organization or even this individual would mean some sort of loss of reputation for us, or some sort of loss of understanding of who we are and what direction we're going into, right? We have to be very much strategic and convicted in what it is that we're doing. And if we're not, then we're going to be opportunistic, cagey, and all over the place. All right, I know we're about to get out of here.
We have we have our Q&A. If anyone has any questions they'd like to ask. I
I
know
know we're
Asia
bumping
said
up at
she
12 o'clock here.
yeah, she had to leave, but she wants me to send her the link for the book, Asia.
Awesome. Yes. And we'll go ahead. We'll make sure we send that link out for the book. If there are any questions, I'm sorry that we took so much time. We do this every month, so it's okay. If there are any questions that we need to address at the next month's discussion, we will. Um, Thank you again for attending. We do have the book is available. Master Grant Writing, a Project Manager's Guide is available on our website at growthisTacit.com. We also have social media platforms that you can like and follow for more educational and partner-worthy content. We're on LinkedIn at Tacit Growth Strategies. Our book is also on LinkedIn at Master Grant Writing, a Project Manager's Guide, where we've had several discussions around the intersection of grant writing, project management, and blockchain. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. On Instagram, you'll find us at Growth is Tacit. On Facebook, if you query for Tacit Growth Strategies, you'll find us. And those are pretty much all of our social media platforms to date. We are mentors with the NASDAQ Entrepreneur Center. So if you are connected somehow to us on that platform, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to this fireside chat. Again, we do this every month, and it's only 30 minutes of your time. If you have questions that you'd like for us to address in advance, feel free to send those over to Ms. Cummings. She's at pmo@growthisTacit.com, and her phone number, Ms. Cummings, what is it, 210?
10-446-9268.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And again, we do these every month. So, if you want to jump on and talk with us next month, just let us know. We'll make sure that we make time for you to, turn your video on and we can chat and make it more of an interactive session. But again, thank you so much for your time and your attention. We look forward to engaging with you at our next monthly virtual discussion. Ms. Cummings, any final words?
Just ask everyone if you would please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we do have a monthly newsletter. Like Ms. Lawson said, you can go to our website, Growth is Tacit, and we have all the links on our page.
Yes, we do. growthistacit.com. That's the website. The newsletter can be accessed on our website and on LinkedIn. So if you want to go on LinkedIn and pull up our monthly newsletter, you can subscribe to that on LinkedIn as well. Again, we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Ms. Cummings, thank you so much for your time, ma'am, and for setting us up here today. We'll be back on it next month.
All right.